and welcome to the Bond. Have you ever wanted to have some adventure, but you were thinking about how to travel, maybe an recreational vehicle? What about a tent? Have you ever gone glamping? That's the glamorous form of camping. Now, there are some cultures that actually use a nomadic lifestyle as part of their community. For example, there are some sort of gypsy type groups that are in Ireland that use RVs to move around. There's also the Samis over in the Nordic countries, and they follow and migrate and need to move around as the reindeer move. In Hollywood, we also have our own little nomadic tribes, and they are usually production companies that need to set up shop in a place. They may not have access to all of those hotel rooms. They may set up some trailers or maybe some RV tents or hotel rooms if they can find it, but it's always a logistics nightmare. Wouldn't it be great if somebody who was on tour or a group of people who just wanted to have a temporary housing situation that could be taken down and not leave any environmental impact could be in a real house? Well, we have a company that does exactly that. They are called Tenfold Engineering, and they have developed a home that can unfold and set up, hook up to plumbing and electric, and then fold up again. And you could tuck that away in a nice little warehouse, maybe reuse it to help out a population that needs some housing later on. It's wonderful because you could be in a temporary plot of land, stay there for just a few months, a few days even, and then move on to a different location. With that, I would like you to meet David Jacks. David, can you hear me?
I can.
Excellent.
Hello.
Well, welcome to the show, and we are so happy that you're here. I would like you to explain the difference between your design, which seems to fold and unfold so easily, and a regular mobile home with the setup, the tear down, and why you started to build it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me on. So conventional mobile homes are regulated by the standards established by the Highway Commission. And so there's a size limit to the height and the width without having special permits. For your viewers, that's very close to the size of a tractor trailer.
Okay.
And so that size, while it works for moving of goods, it's not the most hospitable environment to live inside of.
Now, are you talking about as a primary residence or as an ADU or an accessory dwelling unit?
Both.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
there's some popularity coming around where people are repurposing shipping containers, and certainly many people are familiar with traditional mobile homes as well as the RV lifestyle. However, the way that we have all inhabited space, we tend to want a little bit more width than is being offered by the size of the road. And so Tenfold was designed to transport in one form factor and then open up to a much larger and more usable space.
So what you're saying is with a traditional mobile home, I sometimes see them sort of chopped in half. Some plastic sheeting is on that open area, and then it's on a wide load sign, and there's a truck that takes up a few lanes sometimes and drives very slowly. Are you saying that with your home, it can actually sort of fold in on itself so it fits into the width of a regular delivery truck?
That's exactly correct. And so our form factor actually matches ISO shipping containers. So the same size as a shipping container. And we do that on purpose so that we can transport our structures to any location on the globe.
I see. So that means that if I just want a wider home, I get two of your shipping containers and they unfold together.
Not quite.
Okay. Help me out then.
It leaves our factory in the size of a conventional shipping container.
Okay.
When it gets to your end location, while it's still on the back of the transport vehicle or the truck, it unfolds And when it unfolds, it becomes 3 times its shipped size.
Ah, I see. That's the key. So now
That's
when
right.
it unfolds, that mechanism, is that motor powered or how does that?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So we've been developing the product for a number of years,
Mm-hmm.
and it originally started with mechanical winches, and then we moved to hydraulics,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're in the process of implementing linear actuators
And
that are, go
what
ahead.
how does that make it easier? Does it mean that with the touch of one finger I can set into a cascaded motion that the whole
Yeah.
thing unfolds,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, actually, one finger on an app, right?
one finger on an app? So you're saying I could unfold my home from my smartphone or
That,
my iPad.
that's correct. And
Wow.
all of the contents fold up into the structure itself, right?
So
So
can you make apartment buildings then, or can you stack these on top of each other, or?
yeah, we've been asked a number of times, and
Mhm.
while structurally we could stack them on top of each other,
Mhm.
the efficiencies tend to start to walk away or tend to get lost in the project
Mhm.
because most of your jurisdictions will have building codes relative to egress and staircases and elevators and all of
Right.
these kind of other things that we've grown accustomed to
Mhm.
for good reason. But that um, the power of the product being able to fold up and easily be relocated starts to diminish as you start adding all of those other requirements.
So in some building codes, an ADU or
Yes.
a secondary unit on
Yeah.
someone's property is defined as being 700 square feet or larger. Um, is your basic model about 750 square feet? Do you
Correct.
think?
Our
Okay.
40-foot shipping container unfolds to 800 square feet.
800 square feet. So that's about the size of a very nice one bedroom apartment.
That is
So
correct.
is this a one bedroom type layout, or can you make it a two bedroom? Or let me ask you this: it's
Yeah.
if I wanted to redecorate and not use it for a home, if I wanted it to be like a medical clinic that's here for 1 week while
Yeah.
I'm immunizing somebody,
Correct.
or helping take care of something, can I use one of your units to have a pop up medical clinic?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that's really important about our design and is different than the way that the conventional building market has thought
Mm-hmm.
to date is that we devised one structure that's
Mm-hmm.
a steel structure. It will actually unload itself from the transport truck because
Mm-hmm.
as it unfolds, it lowers its own legs and it lifts itself up, and then the transport vehicle can drive out from underneath of the structure.
I
When it
see.
has those legs, then it lowers itself, and then we can include ADA access or accessibility ramps in a much lower capacity. And that
I see.
gives a compliant environment
Mm-hmm.
as well as it's a structure that can accommodate uses ranging from government activities and science research centers
Mm-hmm.
and all kind of commercial activities like a store near a finish line of a marathon, that kind of thing.
And what about a barn? I mean, sometimes there's some wild horses out there, and maybe somebody
Yeah,
wants to corral them together and put them in a barn, but they're like, "Oh my gosh, I have 50 horses I've just rounded up from the wild, and I need to put
yeah,
them someplace. Let me unfold some of these." And do you have some that could be designed to be stalls,
yeah,
like a
absolutely. I mean,
stable?
because basically what it comes down to is that we're creating 800 square feet of relocatable space
Hmm.
that can then be retransported when needed, right?
And
So,
that includes plumbing, electric, and all that.
correct. And so we have two versions that we've developed where one is based around hooking up the building the way an RV would be hooked up.
Hmm.
Like you would have the bare utilities at a park or a commercial installation, and you could connect to those.
Okay.
And the second is to have a self-contained system that allows the owner to then service that unit the same way that a conventional RV is serviced maybe with extracting or pumping out the wastewater and black water.
I see. So what you're saying is you have two units, one that could connect to an existing city infrastructure like sewer
Correct.
and all that, and then one
Yep.
for the people that want to live out in the middle of nowhere. And
That
they're
is
okay
correct.
with a generator and having a water tank that has to be refilled and all that.
Yeah, and
that right?
and we're working with different manufacturers and suppliers in order to be able to come up with the most efficient and smallest form factor, right? So not only is it potentially a generator powered source, but solar energy, battery storage, and because we're optimizing the interior structure for energy efficiency and sustainability, the structure itself we're able to design in the energy use that is going to be present in the structure.
Okay, so let's get to actually living in something like this.
Sure.
California is filled with shake and bake, right? Super hot days,
Yeah.
lots of earthquakes, a couple of high wind days. So
Yeah.
how do you withstand against natural disasters? Do you
Yeah,
have to
well, great
change
question.
the
So-
design for that, or help me
Yeah.
out?
So all buildings designed since the history of humankind
Yes,
have
yes.
been designed for their specific climate.
Okay.
The number one paradigm that we had to address is if you design a building that can go to any climate, how will it perform in all those varied climates?
Exactly.
So our best example was actually submarines, right? And in some ways, we're more of spacecraft than we are a house. And what I mean by that is space as well as underwater operations are extreme temperature environments. You have lots of pressure, you have lots of variation, you have lots of inhospitable climate that you have to deal with. And so
Excellent.
what we're trying to do is take that environment and bring it to a little bit easier form factor, right? So that we can actually enjoy the varied,
So
beautiful landscapes that we have, right?
So what you're
Yeah.
saying is if you build it in Vermont, it can
Yeah.
withstand snow and cold. If you
That's
build
right.
it in California, it
Correct.
can withstand heat, maybe a little bit of salt air erosion
Yeah.
at the beach, and dare I say wildfires because it's
Well,
steel,
so-
or will it
Yeah,
melt?
so there's a couple of aspects, right? So one is,
Well, wait, let's find out about those aspects when we come back from break. Okay, so stay with us and we're going to find out exactly what sorts of materials will stand up to what sorts of tests when we come back right after this. Stay with us. And we are back. Before the break, we were going to be asking David a little bit about how would his structures withstand in a situation that might be prone to wildfires. So let's hear from him. How do you do your testing for your materials that you use, and how do you make sure that it can withstand earthquakes and fires?
Sure. So with earthquakes, one of the exciting technologies that are coming out are isolation dampeners. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that we are working on in the development is an isolation damper that can be retroactively added to the structure. So when we think about a new paradigm, let's say an individual was living on the East Coast and then they got a transfer and they moved to California, they could move their Tenfold unit to California and purchase the isolation dampers and then set the concrete piles, put it on the isolation dampers, and then bolt their Tenfold to that unit.
So what you're saying is that they have a bit of a foundation, and then they have something that goes on that foundation that's a little bit like a spring to give it some sway, and then you put your Tenfold structure on top of that. So you have the sandwich in order to allow you to have some of that give, so that you're a bit more resistant to something. So your foundation doesn't just snap in half. It actually it lets you do a little bit of a sway dance, right?
Yeah, and it's actually quite a bit. It's almost 18 inches of variation in either direction.
That is quite a sway, but better to sway than to break, than to break away.
Mother Earth is quite dynamic when she wants to be.
Absolutely. Okay, so now what about something like fires? You don't have anything that's tinder in your design, do you?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
So the materials that we're using Class A materials, which is the designation from an architectural perspective on materials and limited combustion.
Is that for fire hardening, so to speak, to make it fire resistant? Okay.
Exactly. But then one of the features that we have that we've been really intent on designing, I serve as a volunteer fireman, and so I've had that experience of interacting with the fire scene. And one of the things that we really we've noticed that we as a civilization wants to get closer and closer to the edge of nature, and we're closer to that edge of where that reaction takes place. And so to accommodate that, one of our suggestions is that if you see a event coming towards your structure, that you would most likely evacuate, but before you evacuate, you would put the structure into turtle mode and you would basically fold it back up.
So you evacuate yourself, you evacuate your family,
Correct.
but then you fold it up so that it gets its little hard turtle shell on top to withstand whatever might be coming by. So it sort of goes into undercover mode.
That's exactly right.
Got it.
And so part of that premise exists in very high wind event areas as well, where we're rated up to 155 miles per hour with the structure. But generally, a municipality will ask residents to evacuate when the winds are projected over 90 miles an hour.
Sure.
And so you would do the same thing. You would fold it up and it would go through the wind event or the hurricane or the storm as a box bolted to the ground. And then after the event, you can, when you return to the scene, you can open it back up and you have a fully functioning structure.
I see. So, I'm actually, the way you're talking about it, it's making me think of a couple of use cases for this. So I'm thinking film crew, obviously. They're going to need that. Concerts, people who need to tour around, maybe even tour the globe, because you can actually fold it up into a shipping container, which means you can ship 100 of these if you need to for your full crew.
Exactly correct.
On-site clinics, medical clinic that just needs to set up temporarily, an office building if need be, a barn, which is super helpful for needing to relocate large animals or even small animals. Maybe you can make lots of compartments for tiny little dogs and cats. So you have something for barns, livestock, touring celebrities. What other, displaced families that need to rebuild. They want to stay on their plot. They don't want to have to go and rent a hotel room. So they can get one of these structures, put it in the backyard while they're overseeing the rebuilding of their permanent home if they need to.
Correct.
So what other use cases are there? Did I pretty much list them?
You list quite a few, and there's many of those we conceived of as a company, right? And what has been fun is that we've received over 72,000 inquiries for variations on those themes, with people coming up with brand new ideas that I'd never even conceived of.
Really?
Right.
Can you give me an example of something?
Absolutely. Like one very dynamic young woman or mom called and said that she had 3 adult children in different parts of the country. And she wanted to be able to live with each of her children in their backyard as an ADU every 4 months.
Oh, you mean so she would go on tour with her children being the audience. So she would just park her house in their backyard. And Now, why is this a better option than, say, an RV? Because
So an RV, if you think about it, it has a center corridor, and all of your activity takes place in the remaining space on either side of the outside walls.
Okay.
In a Tenfold unit, one of the things that takes place is the center is what we build out. And when you open up the unit, you gain a lot more usable space, like 12 feet on either side.
So you can have a living room that you walk into, and a bedroom, a
proper
kitchen.
bedroom, a proper living room. You're not having to place that desired environment to the rear of the vehicle so that it doesn't have a hallway in the middle. Right?
I see. So do you work with interior designers in order to figure out the best way of putting furniture there? Or do you even think about, maybe as long as you're folding up your house, why not fold up all your furniture?
Well, that's a very good point. And in many ways, it's more like building boats than it is building houses, right?
In what way?
So boats are very judicious with their use of space. They find very clever ways to maximize the amount of space because you're trapped in this one container, this one vessel, right? Not trapped, but you're enjoying this one vessel.
Got it.
And so we really focus on that optimization in order to be able to provide the most volumetric interior with the least amount of material. And in many cases, it comes off as a modern aesthetic and a modern lifestyle. We're not really producing a structure with the traditional colonial or pitched roofs and things like that.
Sure, it's a little bit more modern. So what is the, tell me, like, I order a place, I order a unit, a Tenfold unit comes to my backyard, I want to set it up. How long does it take to unfold?
Half an hour.
How long does it take to set it up to the sewer, the water, electric?
Well, if all those things are on site, a couple of hours.
So I could theoretically have a guest room for somebody in my backyard if I wanted to set up in an afternoon or one day.
100% our intention and what we're aiming to deliver. Most of the work that I've done professionally has been around events and special projects and company kind of trade shows and things like that. And so it's always been focused on hours of the ability to set up and be functional and running. And so we're intent on being able to say, you could set up an entire community within 1 or 2 days, given the fact that...
okay. So let's say I have, I don't know, let's say I need 16,000 structures. Hypothetically, how long would it take, assuming that you had the production? I realize you may not have the inventory for that, but assuming it was ready to go, it's delivered to a location. I want to replace 16,000 structures. They're not all the same. Some are houses, some are businesses, some are stables for horses, some are restaurants, some are clinics. How long could I set all that up? Are you saying I could set up 16,000 structures in an ideal situation in about 2 days?
well, 16,000 is a big number, right?
It
But what
is.
I would say is that each structure that you would establish, whether it was a commercial structure or a residential structure or a government facility or office location,
Uh-huh.
could be set up in a matter of 2 hours with almost no labor, right? The
Got it.
intent is that the delivery driver of the truck
Hmm.
can push the app and open the structure,
And
and then it's done,
fantastic.
right?
I really appreciate you coming by and sharing this amazing new concept of a folding house. It just seems so very, very efficient.
Well,
Do you
thank
have
you so
any,
much.
do you have any final words before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I think that the most interesting thing is as we come up with these ideas and we're coming up with new technologies and we're trying to implement a new way of thinking about living, we do have to, gain more interest and do a good job of educating to the people who are experiencing it, because
Hmm.
it's so different from the conventional notion of a house built out of wood,
Hmm. Hmm.
that we're finding that the acceptance rate on certain areas maybe is not as high as we would have hoped.
Well, I want to say thank you so much. And
Yeah.
to our audience, I just want to say Tenfold Engineering seems to be this really innovative company that allows you to fold your home. So this is for someone that wants to actually have that home experience, but they need to move it around. So one possible use case would be that you want to set up your home in your own backyard while you completely build or remodel your permanent residence. Or since it's already rated to be withstanding all kinds of natural elements, it could be something that you take on tour with you, or it could be something like a mother-in-law unit in the backyard. There's so many different possibilities with this, as long as you understand that it's going to look a little bit different than a regular house. It's not going to be like a colonial or shabby chic. It's going to be something that's a little bit more modern. With that, you can use it for a celebrity tour. You can use it for a medical clinic. You could use it for stables, for large animals. There seems to be a variety of uses for having a temporary home for someone that actually wants that home feel, as opposed to something like an RV or a traditional mobile home. So just want to say thank you so much for Tenfold Engineering to giving us yet another reason to bond with our community, to be mobile with our community, and also to get back in touch with nature. And with that, I want to say until we bond again.